Hey everybody, this is AomIsHot22. I'm going to be making a video today at 200 Zoom. I haven't made a live play video in quite a while, so I've been locked out of my YouTube account. I don't know if I'll ever get back into that. I've sent like 7 emails to Google, and I know my password for my account. However, I lost my old phone, and that was the mechanism in which I was able to complete the 2-step verification. So unfortunately, I'm not able to log back in. So I'm going to be starting a new YouTube channel, basically. I do enjoy making videos, and yeah, it just seems like something that's beneficial for me. I don't know about other people, but it's very beneficial for me because it so this is about 4x here, a bit more than 4x position. I'm just going to pitch this rolling a high number. Honestly, I might even just pure pitch it anyways, but a lot of people would be continuing it. On the queen 3-2, so against like the nearly min raise here, he's going to have a lot of hands like queen 3, queen 4, 3-4 suited, and all of the 3s and 4s, whereas we're not going to have these. The cold calling range should be pretty condensed. It won't interact with the Broadway region too well. I'm going to go with the check rolling a high number. I didn't even look at the number, actually. It just seems like a spot that I should be doing a hell of a lot of checking. And this hand will end up mixing between check raise and check call. I see a 91. I feel like I just saw that. Anyways, go with the call. On the turn, essentially, like, yeah, he's not having so many pocket 3s and 4s in his cold calling range, though he certainly should have some. But with 3 rigs behind him, he shouldn't have as many even against the min raise. There's just no reason to develop a leading range. Like, he'll end up having these kind of like 3-4s, ace 3s, ace 4s, ace queens, and something like ace king is not really a hand that we're going to be continuing 100% on the flop, nor is it going to be a hand that we need to be I'm just going to go with the block. Nor is it something that we need to 3 is just going to be a pitch here. It's not going to be a hand that we need to be like ace king or something that we might be repping, or ace 5. We're just not gaining much EV by leading him into him. And actually, it's like quite a polar situation. I think it's quite a bad strategy, especially with such a fairly large portion of our range being exactly like jacks to 7s in this situation. I'm gonna pitch jacks here. Okay, I thought I opened that hand and folded that hand. Apparently not. Maybe my mouse is not working particularly well. It's a bit of a shit spot when the guy just opened jams and we have the under the gun player left to act. Someone could very easily like run a CREV sim and show me that my play is just bad to fold, and I'm very open to that being incorrect. However, maybe it's just the pain that I feel when I run into this whale that shoves 7s and then the other guy has aces, and that's a very easy mathematical thing, but then depending on the frequency at which some random guy just starts shoving in like 40 big blinds, there's obviously this spaz factor, but then his range still is going to have a decent amount of EV against jacks. Again, I'm not thrilled about folding, and it may just be incorrect. Turn 86. We're going to go with the check. I'm going to be betting this about 40% of the time. Betting it extremely often with a heart. Just reducing his continues, obviously. However, river, we really need to just be bluffing this. And essentially our minimum value range on this river, assuming that a rec is not going to be finding enough river check raises, is just going to be something like queen 9 or 10-9. Just some sort of 9 in this situation. Ace 4 goes with the snap. The ace of spades is probably not the greatest card, given that we're gonna have to find a decent amount of ace-high bluffs here in the ace 6 to ace 7, this sort of region. Yeah, maybe he thinks we're too heavy in this sort of thing, but a lot of our like Queen Jack and Jack 10 end up having to barrel turn an absolute shit ton, especially with a heart. So I don't think. I mean, I think this call is going to be mixed, but don't think it's worth a whole lot, especially if we're not finding enough bluffs. We're going to go with a call here. So, assuming that this guy is not raising so many hands, like, and this is the spot. Again, he just has a 2-pair advantage. He should be defending, like, the king 5 offs, king 4 offs against min. Maybe it's very close against 2.1. Just going to go with the call here. We do have, like, a nut advantage. We could end up trying to fast play this. I'm not thrilled about it. Turn is the 8 of diamonds, so he does make a few more 2 pairs. However, we do have some 6-7 in our range. Rolling a 72, I'm going to go with the check, but it's fairly high EV spot. Going to continue again. Fairly high EV card for his range, but we end up having some pretty strong hands, is what I mean, in our range that want to continue barreling, and we'll just mix this on the turn. River, I don't think people will develop enough check raises. Rolling 100, we'll just go with the check back. River 40 seems like obviously a good hand to shove and a good hand to call. I just don't know if like some random wreck is going to be barreling off 3 streets here with enough bluffs. Turn 68, I'll go with the call. Though I do think the sizing is a bit imbalanced and like probably not enough of his nutted combos, I'm assuming. Like, I don't think there's enough like nuts in this turn probing range, and I think there's a few too many like king jacks, da 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 da. It's almost tempting to value bet, but the issue is that there's just a bit too much king queen, and few too many like random ace queens, and then king jacks that are just going to pitch, and then occasionally he'll have something like queen 10 that decides to check after getting here. So I don't think it's ever a value bet. Obviously, we're also blocking a jack that we're hoping ends up calling. Occasionally, he'll find some checks as well with strong hands. I think having a decent frequency raise on the turn with that exact combo, given our assumptions about his sizing, tells us quite reasonable. 4s, cutoff. We're using a min raise. I don't mind opening this. I'm kind of indifferent to opening or folding this particular hand. I'm just timing out all over the place. I don't know why my Stars Helper's not working very well. We're going to continue checking. This is a spot where like the big blind will end up actually probably over-probing too many value hands. And as a result, we end up increasing our betting frequency on this turn relative to optimal, as well as the button will end up betting probably more often than he's supposed to in this situation on the flop and having a weaker range to the turn. We're coming close to a range check on the flop in this situation, so we have an extremely strong range getting to the turn. We could occasionally mix in something like this. I just don't think it accomplishes a whole lot versus recreational players, and I think just betting about 4 bucks trying to get like calls out of various 10x and this sort of thing. You might have a whale call like 8-7. So he does call 10x, which is what we're kind of hoping for. Obviously here we end up doing pretty good. Like we end up having all of the straights in our range. We end up having a bunch of 2 pairs and sets as well, all the pocket 5s and 3s, as well as like all the 2 pair combinations. Occasionally we'll raise like ace 5 suited, but a very, very, very strong board for us. However, a king jack is a pure check, and I'm just going to pure check my entire range. Here, rolling 66, going to go with the check back. We're having to check quite a few flushes on the flop in this situation. Turn continuing to go with the check with the king jack. Rolling 40. This is like quite low in our ace-x region, and we end up doing a lot of checking on the flop. 40 seems like a bit of a higher number. I'm going to go with a small delay. Seems pretty appropriate with the number that I rolled in the exact spot. Again, Haxil is probably going to be front dooring too many hands as well. I think we can increase our delay frequency a bit more often than maybe we theoretically should, and I think we'll gain a bit of EV as a result of that. As a result of him just front dooring too many hands. 92 on the turn. We're just going to have to check. Yeah, we can't be bluffing this 100% of the time, obviously. And in terms of the flush region. He'll have some king X of spades here, certainly. That's about it. A lot of the ace X of spades are going to be 3-betting pre-flop and this sort of thing. And we're against $6 we have to pitch this. Lux is always folding to 4-bets. For better or for worse. I think just betting range here is probably the strongest option. I also think that people play terribly in these 3-bet pots relative to actually what solvers want them to do. Ace on the turn. In terms of the ace X that he'll end up having, he'll have like ace queen, ace king, some ace 3, but there's not a whole lot of ace X, so you will see a solver do a lot of like small betting here, and you will see some solvers, maybe not as much small betting. I think that's probably more of the out of position than the strategic option if we were going to go with the check back. Just a spot where like he's not going to end up having so many of these ace X combos, though. Obviously, it's just a ridiculously high EV turn. And then the river, like, really the option here is we're supposed to be shoving a lot. If he does end up having more of the ace king, I think we can develop like smaller raise sizings. Oh my god, it just fucking timed out and folded my fucking full house. Jesus Christ. I'm so annoyed with like the like auto like timeout shit. I'm sitting there, I didn't even know that my fucking thing was expiring. Like, yeah. I'm not really annoyed at that, but I'm trying to think about like the best sizing. I'm trying to sort it out, and then it just like it's like, you know, I don't know, poker's a thinking game. I can't believe like they've just eliminated all the time banks in a game where we're obviously supposed to like there's a lot of depth in poker. We're supposed to be doing a lot of thinking. Rolling a 96 here, our weakest king X basically UTG is going to be king 6, so which is not even going to be a pure open. I want to just find a check here, rolling 96. In terms of like the turn raise strategies, I'm not going to time out again. I'll raise and then I'll be more articulate. When they end up having very like capped probing strategies for like those $4 bets, essentially the solution is just to go massive with our raising range. And that can just include various top pairs. We don't need to be polarized with that sizing, assuming that he just probes a bunch of 10x and that sort of thing and is fairly imbalanced about his sizing. It's not a big deal. Very high EV board for us. Okay, we'll go with the third pot. Manny. I think they're supposed to... okay, we're going to go with the check. There's this whole like region of like 5s to 9s that we're obviously losing to at a very high frequency. River with a club and a diamond, we're just going to have to bluff catch a lot. Do I over bluff catch here? I probably am going to just pure call because I think he'll bet a little bit bigger with the 10 in general, and he's probably like, yeah, he's going to have a lot of that, but I think he's going to be pure bluffing a lot of the weaker hands. So what can I do? I'm going to check range here, out of position on the turn. I think people are just going to delay too often with their queen X, then we end up getting to have like massive raises with like a straight region, and really, I mean, he auto calls. Seems like we should just be bluffing this really often. Low hearts are obviously really good, and it's going to be very hard to find enough bluffs here. However, like a random rack that is $40 left, are you really going to find enough folds? Obviously, that's a very bad outcome, and that's the reason why we're supposed to be bluffing that almost always, because we're just like losing to busted hearts and this sort of thing. Rolling 80-something on the RNG, we're going to go with the check. Could go with some leads here. the turnover bet of 22-33. I think we're just going to see a hell of a lot of exactly 5-7 and pocket fives. I think we're just going to see a ton of exactly pocket fives. It's just like, what's the best option here? This was supposed to be a call. I just looked at the number. I'm just going to pitch river. That's unfortunate, but there are some spots where I'm going to end up folding more often than a solver versus solver would, just because I don't think people are finding the appropriate bluffing frequencies in a number of these situations, and as a result of that, obviously we don't want to be calling too often. We'll mix some raise here with this combo, but probably like 5-10% of the time. Obviously, we're just beating king check. We have the most easy call in the world. Don't think we're mixing any sort of raise with this combo. We will find some turn raises with various like combo draws, I think. I'm not going to have any leads on the river. I think just checking range makes the most sense. Range versus range again. And obviously we're just jamming. I would like to take longer. I just don't want to get timed out again. I'd be like so tilted. I think I just didn't have any time bank here. In terms of like our bluffs, we're just going to have exactly like king, queen with the queen of spades to be bluffing. Him having the queen of spades is obviously not very good. And especially when like we're not like we might be calling exactly like jack 8 of spades, but probably those check raise flop sometimes, and we're not going to have weaker flushes in this situation, and he blocks exactly the queen of spades to be bluffing. I think he just needs to mix fold there. Of course, his best bluff catchers are going to be spades, but when his minimum value range for that timing and sizing are, okay, again, rolling very high. I feel like every single hand we're just rolling high. We're going to check river here. Yeah. So, oh my God, that's big. Why do I feel like people just like cold call a bunch of like jacks and tens here, and they end up and like even like ace king, and they end up just like firing ace king and I sorry like aces and ace king. Like obviously it's incredibly exploitable. It's not a great thing to be like doing this on video, but sometimes it makes the most sense to just find folds where you think you probably should be folding. Obviously, giving away information and this sort of thing is not really amazing, but what can you do? In the past, I've just made way too many stations in spots that I just shouldn't be making stations because, LOL, I'm making a video and I should never ever fold this hand in a million years. And it's like timing, sizing, all these different things. People are probably not bluffing enough in like infinite spots. Actually, like that's just like factual. Like in infinite spots, when I'm playing and I see people just like check the absolute bottom of their range all the fucking time because they think your range is strong and whatever the fuck. When it's like, oh, you should be bluffing that. I mean, and obviously not everybody's doing that. Some people are doing the exact opposite, but those people I have tagged or I played with a lot, or maybe they're just going to end up owning me. Shifty does an absolute shit ton of folding to 4-bet. As a result of that, I'm going to do a bit more calling. Shifty just, I don't have a HUD or anything, but I played thousands of hands with Shifty. Rolling a 19, I'm going to end up raising this hand. This is gonna mix flop, but fairly high frequency raise. Then he'll have to find some flop 3-bets and all this sort of thing as well. I'd like to do a lot of calling against Shifty for what it's worth on that flop. However, rolling that number, flatting that hand, I think I just need to find the race when I roll a 19. I think if I roll like a 35 or 40 or higher, I can end up going with a call. I need to have some raise frequency there, though, and 20% seems 25, 30% seems appropriate. I just like to try to play solid. I'm not amazing. I'm not killing anybody. I'm not doing any like crazy exploits or anything. I'm just trying to play solid. And I don't even have the strongest fundamental game. I don't really have the strongest fundamental game, but I do try to think about poker logically, and it does okay at the mid stakes. I think at the higher, I mean, not high stakes. Obviously, I'd get obliterated there, but I think at like 1K now, it also probably ends up working out. I've been playing a bit more 1K recently. And there's, I mean, obviously, when you have like a recreational player at the table, it's ridiculously hard to be losing money. Here, depending on like the Broadway region that he ends up floating, if it's like a regular, there's not so much like offsuit Queen of Spade X that he can end up hitting. Hackzilla, we're going to go with the call. So we could end up like doing some overbets with like tens and jacks here occasionally against some people. However, I think against a rec, his range is going to be like fairly, go with the check back here, fairly high EV board though with this high frequency bet. Not having any leads here, of course. Turn rolling an 8. I think it's actually fine to have an occasional raise. Could go a bit bigger as well. 21 just seems like very value heavy. What are you doing there? Ace of Spades, not a good hand to be bluffing the river with. Not that it matters a whole lot, but he will end up having just like a decent amount of Ace X of Spades. Not like infinite amounts, but he will have some, and we don't really want to be blocking those. I think like bluffing the mandatory, like Jack 10, King Jack sort of stuff. It's a fine strategy in itself. I don't think we need to be trying to overbluff this particular situation. As well as we're not going to have exactly like 6-4 suited 100% of the time. Now, I should against two recreational players. However, I probably just autopilot a lot and try to open like 42, 41%, 43% on the button. That's really a mistake. I should be opening something like 48 with all the recs. Like as an average, and then with recreationals, I should be going over like 50%. However, I'm just a bit autopilot-y and non-thinking. So I know myself that I'm not going to have 4-6 at a pure frequency here. Not that that particular hand matters. Obviously, there's like 8-6 as well, and there's some other hands. Those are going to be open. It's going to go with the check. So we're 22 minutes in. I feel like I've just been rambling and spewing a bunch of bullshit, so I do apologize. I haven't made a video in a very long time. Very, very, very long time. And I haven't even played online poker, barring a few sessions in a very long time. I've just been gambling it up in Macau and Vegas and Los Angeles. So yeah, I've been playing like live poker for a little bit less than 3 months. I'm going back to Macau again for I think 3 weeks in less than 10 days. So we'll see how that Macau trip goes. This we can mix in some 3-betting. Rolling a 7, I will. A 97 on the RNG, just always checking with that number. This hand gets checked at a pretty decent frequency anyways. Rolling at 11, going with the raise. Only using half pot bets. Flop, I'm betting my entire range for 40%. However, maybe that's not the best strategy, actually. I'm sorry. Today I realized that I'm playing a mixed strategy. Oh, okay, I'm going to go with the check. Sorry, normally I'm playing like fairly pure strategies in a bunch of spots. Rolling 21. I think we just pure call this regardless, though. So this guy ends up just jamming into us. I sort of think he just calls a bunch of draws, and he ends up making some 2 pairs and stuff. This is a pretty good hand, though. What the fuck? Kind of when we're repping this overpair region, and we block a 9 that he could potentially just be overvaluing, and then we're losing to like King 9, Ace 9. It's just not a great spot to be calling. in this particular situation, our perceived range is like a bunch of overpairs, and then ace king, ace queen, some king queen, backdoor, that sort of thing. River, we have a very clear check with our hand. Yeah, I mean, potentially we could actually find some bluffs. However, I'd really prefer to be going with the bluffs with exactly like ace 3. I'd prefer to be bluffing ace queen, which is going to be 16 combos in and of itself. We're also going to have to find like some frequency of check raise on the river, so we can't like front door all of our good hands. So we need to be fairly careful about our bluffing frequency. River, I think we're just perceived to check call a lot. Again, I hate to go into the psychology of the situation. Essentially, what he's going to be representing for value here is exactly a king. We do block king queen. Again, I think we're perceived to be check calling a lot. How many tables? If you're playing one table, I'm going to call you. If you're playing multiple tables, I'm just going to find a pitch. Michael. You're playing 3 tables. I don't know. I just think we're perceived to call a lot. He could potentially try to bluff out exactly ace queen. It's so weird because he's really not repping a lot of hands. However, obviously having a queen here, blocking like queen, jack, queen 10, queen 9 that are going to bluff at a high frequency is not an amazing thing. And they're also going to be the queen X of diamonds that stab very frequently on the flop. I don't think my blockers are particularly good to be calling the river. I think having something like ace 5 there and unblocking this sort of like queen X region is good. I like to be very selective about my river calls and not necessarily be tight, but I like to be not just blindly calling because, oh, it doesn't make sense. Obviously, he's trying to put us in a tough spot with that sizing. And maybe I don't construct a proper range to check raise on the river. I mean, maybe I don't. I tend to think, given what I'm perceived to be doing, and probably your average villain is going to be doing a lot of calling there under the notion that it doesn't make infinite sense and it's a good price, and he can just rep a bunch of these like 10-9 hands. Yeah, I think he expects a lot of calls in that situation. So yeah, again, I hate to look at things in like the psychology realm. I absolutely hate looking at poker like that. I think it's just not a very good way of approaching poker, but you do have to look at general psychology occasionally, and you do have to think about what they see in your average villain. For me to even talk about that, I feel like it's slightly dangerous for me to talk about the way that I think about things, but whatever. I guess I'm giving some stuff away to make videos and try to very high EV board. We're just c-betting basically our entire range without a large sizing, given like the 2-pair advantage here that he's going to have with like queen 7 off and jack 7 off. And obviously he'll be 3-betting a bunch of like sets here, but there are a ton of 2 pairs. I don't think it's really warranted to be using big bets. I'm going to basically c-bet like 90 or 100% of my range for a quarter pot. Occasionally I'll roll like 90 something and find a check, or high 80s and find a check with various hands, but it's just such a good board. We should be doing a ridiculous amount of betting, blind v blind. Thus far, we're 30 minutes into the video. This is about a 5x raise. I'm going to end up calling this about 70% of the time. 60, 70%. We roll a 60, so we'll go with the call. I don't think this is a pure continue against 5x. And rolling an 80, we're just going to have a check back. However, I do think Manny's the type of guy that's going to like bet way too many jacks and queens and that sort of thing, and not find enough like checks with strong hands. As a result of that, as a result of Manny probably front dooring too many strong hands, and especially over delaying the turn with like queens, kings that get checked. Instead of like our delays on the turn, which are generally going to be fairly high frequency small bets. So he goes 100 and I think he goes like 60 something on the turn. I think to fold out most of our hands. Again, this is just a bit like general psychology. 60 plus 6. I think we're just proceed to be doing. I don't know. I'm like thinking about the hand. Okay, I'm gonna find a fold. It's like ridiculous to be folding as far as where we are in our range. I just feel like there's so many imbalances in these spots as far as people's sizings, like all over the place. Where like, if he wanted to fold this out with like most of our range. Like when you look at an equity graph, like the top end hands that are going to be like continuing, he can just bet any sizing against when he does end up having that top end stuff, and it just assumes that we're always going to be continuing with those hands. Whereas like all the weaker hands, if he has something like King Queen or King Jack or whatever, especially that SPR where we're going to be forced to call a lot on the river, he might end up going a bit of a different sizing. Oh my god, I just hate talking about this sort of stuff, really, but it seems like it's fairly relevant. So I'm going to be playing mixed strategy today. 63. We'll do that. King 4 against half pot. He's Chinese, probably playing turns bad. I'm going to go with a I'm going to go with a pretty loose call against like 40-something% pot, under the assumption that he's just going to end up playing a bit too straightforward on turn and river decisions. Against 950, that's just a fold. There's nothing we can do. Like, I'm not going to start finding raises with that exact hand. I need to have like a stronger hand to start finding raises with. His play, a third pot is not really a thing on that card, but good for him. My play in terms of the EV is definitely not going to be too loose, but probably should be folding a lot, or it definitely should be folding a lot versus better players. I think people play incredibly badly, small blind versus big blind, and just like bet way too many strong hands on the turn and do not find enough checks. And as a result of that, I think there is a bit of EV to be gained by, and also I don't think they find the necessary frequency of bluffs from the small blind. I think they end up like being a little bit too passive with their weaker hands when they should be finding more bluffs. And it's not like a huge deviation from equilibrium in terms of like way under bluffing. I think it's slight, but when you couple that with the fact that they're going to be front dooring too many strong hands, it ends up making and they're not going to find enough turn check raises and all this sort of stuff. Not that it matters with our error, but not that it matters with our error on the turn, but it just gives us very, very easy decisions in a bunch of spots, and it increases the EV of our floats, like not tremendously, but enough to where like, okay, this float is like worth like normally like negative a tenth of a big blind. Maybe it's worth like a tenth of a big blind. So anyways, this is AomIsHot22. Thanks for watching and peace out.